to Reddit aliens. What's the creepiest, most unexplainable thing that you've seen in broad daylight? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. While this can be explained, the image still creeps me out to this day. It was around the time of planking craze. I had no idea what it was and hadn't heard anything about it. Got a taxi into town and was walking around the city center and life was normal. I then take a turn into the town square and there was around 200 people planking everywhere, on everything. I don't know what was going on. I thought there may have been gunshots or a bomb, or maybe the world was ending. I then asked someone next to me and they explained it and we laughed it off. But for the brief moment of time, I'll never forget that uneasy feeling. A man with freshly exposed bone on his arm and missing a substantial amount of skin and muscle walked up to me in a parking lot asking me calmly for cigarettes. It really freaked me out, and I told him I was calling 911 for him. He immediately ran off, and I gave his description to 911. There wasn't much blood, but the guy clearly needed immediate medical attention. This was in San Jose on an afternoon about 5 to 6 years ago. Still have the image giving me nightmares to this day. I used to live on a farm, and one morning there was a full horse leg on our driveway, like still had part of the hip attached and was fresh. We sprinted down to our horse paddock to find all our horses completely fine. We disposed of the leg and never got an explanation. Very creepy. P.S. This happened in Canberra, Australia, so there's no mountain lions or bears around here. Maybe someone was giving you an offer you couldn't refuse. I know I'm not the only one who thought it. Come on. Creepy, but explainable. My dad is a paramedic, and one call took him to an SUV that had driven into the river and was being towed out. The car was obviously not working, and the two guys inside had already passed away. As they're pulling the dead guys out of the car, suddenly all the lights flash on, the windshield wipers start going on full speed, and the car starts blaring the radio at max volume. Freaked everyone right out. It was 1984. I was 15 years old and was alone at my older sister's house. It was late morning. I had just gotten out of the shower, still wrapped in a towel, when I heard a noise outside. I looked out a window and watched a complete stranger tying the doorknob of the main entrance to the railing of the deck with a rope I used to walk the dog with. He then leaned a mop that was on the deck against the door. I called my sister, told her what happened, got dressed, got the heck out of the house through a different door, and hid in the bushes until police arrived. The house was somewhat remote with no close neighbors. Found out later, the door he tied up was unlocked. No clue how long he had been lurking around before I knew of his presence. To this day, we have no idea who that was and what his motives were. Beyond creepy, definitely unexplained. Me, my two brothers, and our uncle were running down the lake in his boat on a beautiful summer's day, blue sky as far as the eye can see, until we looked towards the north shoreline and saw a smallish passenger jet flying low, until it went below the tree line and disappeared. We were flabbergasted because our family had been in the area for over 100 years and there's not an airstrip in that direction anywhere. There was no loud bang, no fireball, nothing. No way it had crashed. We still don't know how it was possible that it did what it did. Crossing at a busy intersection and seeing my perfect double walk towards me, we basically eyes locked until we passed each other, a total mind F. Even more disturbing, instead of stopping and chatting and being amused by the entire biological coincidence, my immediate subconscious reaction was a massive rising internal rage that someone, somehow, had stolen my face. Very, very weird. Not really creepy, but I was walking down the street on my way to the store when a large dog jumped through a glass window from a second story of a house and landed on the front lawn. I tried knocking on the door and got no answer from them or any of their neighbors, so I called animal control and stayed with the dog, who, other than a few scratches, was okay. Once they arrived, they called the police to investigate because even the animal control lady had no clue what would cause a dog to do that. When I was about 8, my parents, my brother, and me were hiking somewhere in Austria when we came across the ruins of a medieval castle on a hilltop. A sign said that there was a cafe near the ruins, so we went up. The cafe was deserted, all the tables and chairs were toppled, and next to the building stood a brand new big Mercedes with a lot of bullet holes in the trunk and the rear window. The car was heavily armored. The rear window was so thick that the bullets hadn't even penetrated it. We turned around on the spot and got out of there as fast as we could. Back in the hotel, my dad reported it to the police, but they dismissed it. Never knew what came of it. My family had the car packed up for a road trip because we were moving across the country from the PNW to the Rust Belt. We were heading to the highway to get out of town and had to take some weird access road to get there. On the way, there was a man holding a long-barreled rifle to a woman's head, walking through a vegetable garden. He was holding it with one hand and had a cigarette in his mouth. The woman was crying. My mom didn't believe me. I was 14. I know what I saw. In college, I lived on the 11th floor in an apartment with no balcony, and it was about 4:30 in the afternoon. I watched a man walk into my apartment about 10 seconds before I walked in and habitually bolted the door behind me. It locked automatically on the outside. I was living with 3 roommates at the time, so I just figured they were having guests over, no biggie. I put my stuff on the couch and went towards the back bedroom to say hi to whoever came over. My roommates had no idea what I was talking about. It wasn't a big apartment, but I searched everywhere. My roommates stayed in the back bedroom sufficiently freaked out. There was no one else in the apartment, and the door was still bolted from the inside. This is my dad's story, not mine. In the 80s, my dad was a Peace Corps and lived in Sierra Leone for 3 years. He had a motorcycle, or some sort of motorbike at least at one point, and would ride around the roads when he had free time. One day, he's riding a dirt road that snakes around a small mountainside or hillside past some construction works. About half a mile after the road work, he sees a man on the side of the dirt road on the mountain hillside just laughing his butt off, and he was blue. Not like painted blue, but blue. At first, my dad rode on thinking nothing of it, and then it sunk in that he saw a blue dude sitting on the side of the road laughing wildly. He turned around and rode back to where he saw the blue dude, and there was nothing there. He kept retracing his path beyond the roadwork and never saw the blue guy again. Later that day, he went back to the village he was living in at the time and told the locals about what he had seen. The locals all laughed and said essentially, "No, you didn't. White men can't see devils." My dad, brother, and I went to a movie theater one day in Florida. It was around 4-ish, so it was getting darker but still light out. We went up to the front where you buy tickets, and when we looked around, there was absolutely no one in the movie theater at all. No employees, no other guests. We simply walked in, looking all around to try to find anyone we could to purchase a movie ticket, but could find no one else. All the movies in each of the theaters we checked were running, but with no one else inside. So we just sat down and watched the movie, then left without seeing anyone else the whole time. It was very surreal. You should have grabbed some popcorn too. Might as well make a whole day of it. See all the movies. Did anybody used to movie hop when they were younger? I might still do. An older man watching me at a gas station and then literally following me for miles around town. Like if I turned into a parking lot and started driving another road, he still followed me. I got on a 4-lane road in the left lane and got beside someone, then sped up and merged while taking an exit, so the guy was blocked by the pickup truck in the right lane. That's probably the scariest thing I've ever had happen in broad daylight. I'm not sure why this came to mind, but I still haven't been able to figure it out. Shortly after I'd started a new job, I accidentally jumped the wrong bus home. It was the same line as my usual bus, but it ran an adjunct route that dropped me a mile or two from where I needed to be. It was a Simpsons moment. The bus driver turned around and told me, "This is the end of the line, you have to get off." I began my trek to the park and ride and took my liberties cutting through various vacant and business lots. One such lot was a construction supply yard full of cement forms and heavy equipment. I definitely didn't belong there, so I was feeling a bit on edge as I crept through. I saw something out of the corner of my eye that startled me so badly that I yelped. It was an animal roughly the size of a small dog with long ears like a rabbit, but it was standing on its hind legs, and when it saw me it took off, jumping the way something like a kangaroo would, bounding large distances with just its hind legs and its front legs tucked in. It was fast, and it disappeared so quickly that it made the moment all the more surreal. I think some of us know the feeling. It was like I'd seen something I wasn't supposed to have seen. I wrote it off as being some kind of very large jackrabbit at the time, but when I got home and did a little research, jackrabbits don't move that way, nor are there any species that even remotely resemble that in my area, northern United States. Maybe it was some kind of escaped exotic animal. It creeped me out and helped me cover the long walk back to my car that much more quickly. My high school girlfriend and her family all talked about the ghost in their house and always said that it sounded like a man wearing boots walking down the hallway. We were all very close, and one day when they weren't home, I just walked in and went to my girlfriend's room and laid on her bed while I waited for them to get back. A man in boots walked slowly right down the hall and right past the door to girlfriend's room where I was laying. I did the next logical thing and just climbed out of her bedroom window. They showed up a few minutes later and asked why I was just standing around in the front yard and why I hadn't just gone in. I told them that I heard the ghost and climbed out the window to escape. They laughed their freaking heads off. Broad daylight, totally creepy, and very unexplainable. On a trip to Gulf Shores, Alabama, stopped to gas up at some rundown gas station that was also a truck stop in Mississippi. Went to the bathroom, and as I'm standing at the urinal, I had the strangest feeling that something was off. This strange feeling overwhelmed the entire left side of my body. I don't claim to be supernatural or have any weird feelings or premonitions, and I've never experienced that feeling before that day or since. Anyways, I get up on my tippy toes to look to my left where the stalls were located. There was this deranged looking white guy with nasty, greasy ass hair and an effed up scowl on his face staring directly at me. The most typical looking psycho killer you could imagine. He had to have been standing on the toilet because I could see his whole face and the upper part of his shoulders immediately zipped up and got the F out of Dodge. Didn't even wash my hands. When I was young, me and my cousins found a bloody shirt in our woods. My cousins and their parents hunted, so we thought maybe it was from that. But then we found a Ziploc bag with shoes and shorts. All had to be from an extremely petite woman or an older kid. When we told our uncle about it, we got punished and weren't allowed to talk about it. I don't speak to them anymore, but really makes you wonder. I believe there is a name for this phenomena, but I would never know how to go about Googling such a thing. But this was around 2013 or so, and I was having a smoke in front of my apartment on the front steps in the middle of the day, around noon or so. I got up to head back, and just for a few fleeting seconds, while looking at the building, it totally looked unfamiliar. I knew I lived there, I knew it was my home, I knew I had just stopped outside only 5 minutes previously, but my brain was giving me some kind of indication that I'd never seen this place before and that there was danger inherent. I just kind of violently wagged my head back and forth like an aggressive no gesture and was immediately back to normal. But I'll never forget that moment. It was like my concept of reality had very momentarily just cracked. I was walking past the church one day when I was about 15, and standing in front of one of the graves was a cowboy dressed head to toe in pure white. He looked straight out of a movie. His hat, shirt, waistcoat, trousers, and boots were all so white, like an incredibly clean white, as if he'd only put them on. He was white, had short brown hair, stubble, and was an average-looking guy. I kept staring at him, blinked, and then he was just effing gone. I live in the UK, so it was so weird to see anyone resembling a cowboy anyway. I don't know if it was my mind playing tricks on me, but I could swear he was there too. He looked so real. I guess this sort of fits. Used to be an outside claims adjuster in my 20s and had a particularly shitty territory in a major city. One day I was walking to a shop to write an estimate and noticed a condom filled with poop on the sidewalk. Ugh. Stared at it for a minute or so, thinking about the decisions I had made in my life that led to that point. Between the poop condom and the job overall taking its toll on me mentally, I started looking for a new career when I got home that night. Good for you. If you're looking for a sign to change your life, a condom filled with poop is a pretty good one. This maybe isn't creepy, but it's definitely unexplained, to me anyways. Maybe 12 to 15 years ago, every now and then, I'd see this little light squigglies in the air. If you played Kirby Canvas Curse, it looked kind of like that. A little rainbowy white squiggle. It was fast too. Never lasted more than a second. I always figured it was a trick of the light, so it never bothered me. I just thought, I wonder what that thing is. Oh well, must be a trick of the light. Then one night I came home late with my dad, probably around midnight to 1 o'clock. I was ahead of him walking towards the door. Out of the corner of my eye, I see it. One of those squigglies darted through the front lawn. The street was mostly illuminated by the streetlights, so once again, I thought it was just something with the light. A few seconds passed. Hey, did you just see that light go across the lawn? My dad asked. All the time I thought it was just in my head. I asked him if it was like a squiggle of light. He said yes. After we moved, I never saw anything like it ever again. I think about it every now and then. I wonder if my dad still remembers. If anyone has seen anything like what I described or knows what we saw, what was it? I was maybe 14 to 15 years old, and I would frequently sleep on the couch in our living room. We lived in a typical suburban colonial, where the couch faced the front door. Since I could remember, we'd never locked our doors, as we lived in a pretty decent city. I remember one night I was still awake at 3 to 4 a.m. listening to music when I saw a car quickly pull up our driveway. I then saw a very skinny, tall man open our front door, stand in the hallway for 20 to 30 seconds facing my direction, then leave the house and drive away quickly. I remember telling my parents and entire family this in the morning, and they did not believe me. My dad insisted it was him, as he'd leave for work in the early hours of the morning. I knew I was young, but I also know that was not my dad, as my dad was stockier and shorter than this man. Freaks me out to this day to think what this man was going to do.